This is a story of brotherhood, camaraderie, bravery, straight from the brave men who fought fire and won. This is a story of a foundation. This is the story of the South Lynches Fire Department.
South Lynches Fire Department was originally chartered in 1955 as the Lake City Rural Fire Department with my father as the charter president. It was a group of men that were concerned about fires in the community in an approximately 12-mile radius of Lake City, primarily farms, tobacco barns, houses, tenant houses that were burning, and there was no organized fire department or equipment to handle this need.
You had limited telephone service. You had long runs because we didn't have stations out in the communities like we do now. So you're running everywhere in the area from Lake City. So you had long runs, you didn't carry enough water, and most of the time when the fire department got there, it was too little and too late.
I grew up about 7 miles from Lake City, and I can remember the days when there wasn't a fire department for the rural area. I can remember the days when there was a fire department, but the response time was so far away that it wasn't worth the effort to call them. I donated the land for Station 5, and on that site was a tenant house that belonged to us that burned, and I can remember when it caught fire, I was going to run to the house and call the fire department. My father told me not to bother, that by the time they got there, it would be on the ground. And he and I sat there and watched the house burn down in about 15-20 minutes.
The Lake City Fire Department provided some limited coverage, but they had been operating with a 1929 Dodge, a 1936 Ford, a 1941 military surplus pumper, and a 1945 Chevrolet truck that was built by members of the department. It didn't have very much water capacity in the tanks on those trucks, and they just weren't suited for rural firefighting. And everybody knew there was a better way to do it, so a number of people got involved and organized Lake City Rural Fire Department, and it was chartered on January 27th, 1955.
Walter Moody was the first fire chief. Keels Brockington was the first president, and a group of firefighters, Raymond Askins, Roy Rogers, Press Grimsley, Joe Tucker, and L.W. McDaniel put forth the effort to see it more than just a dream, to see it put into action. They were responsible for beginning this fire department. It was formed by this group of men who raised money and then sold memberships to the people to be actually known as a member of the fire department for $10 a year, and they would protect your farm or house or whatever the property. It continued under this system until the late 60s, when the original group was aging, went through what I call the dark ages, the mid 60s, when the equipment was fairly worn out, did not have a fire station, a building, and the funding was inadequate. Harry Askins, whose father was the chief at the time, became very active. He was just out of high school, going to Clemson, and I really got active in the fire department, recruited a couple other young fellas, Charles Mazon, Ed Roper, Michael Rhodes, and we took it upon ourselves to build the rural fire department back to a very strong functioning agency. We experienced much frustration with worn out equipment that failed at fires, and our success rate of putting fires out was minimal. And we made the decision to either get in it all the way and figure out how to fund it and re-equip it, or get out. Fortunately, Harry was strong enough to figure out how to get tax supported. He also was in the National Guard at the time. He was stationed at Fort Bragg, would stray out and see how rural fire departments up there worked. Discovered the first dump tank operation where we would fold out like a portable swimming pool, dump the water in it, go for more, and able to sustain a firefight in the rural area, first in South Carolina. Made it profitable to have a rural fire department to pay taxes, to get lower insurance rates, and that's where it really spawned then changing the name to Lower Florence County Fire Department as we expanded with stations in Coward, Cam Branch, and the Leo community, and then changed in about 1982 when we created the South Lynches Fire District and opened a station in the Williamsburg portion of the community. Also obtained the lowest available insurance rating in the state for a fire department that did not have pressurized fire hydrants.
We were broke. We were a bunch of volunteers. We were operating on a contract system that many people didn't believe in and wouldn't buy contracts for us. And there were days that we literally didn't have money to put gas in the trucks to be able to respond.
Probably the biggest, when we were known as Lower Florence County Fire Department, and it was the Station 1 out of Lake City and Coward's Fire Station. When we expanded in the 80s to South Lynches Fire District with our 4 more stations, adding 4 more at the time, to go from 3-4 pieces of equipment to 15 pieces of equipment plus what we have today, it's just amazing to look back at our history from where we were just 8 or 9 years prior to that to where we are today.
I can remember when we all got new engines for the 5 fire stations that were in operation at the time. That was the first time that any of us or all of us had new up-to-date equipment. We'd operated on used and second-hand equipment up until that day.
We started out with 3 trucks when I joined the department, 2 tankers and a pumper, and we have since added 8 more stations and lots more people.
We moved along. I mean, we still do the same job, but the equipment and all that we have now is a lot better than what we had back then.
Since I've been with the department, we've had major changes in far as apparatus. When I first got on, we still had an older fleet. Constantly you had to work on them, and they were manual transmissions. Mostly now everything we have is automatic transmission with air conditioner and most of the common luxuries of your personal vehicles today. So I've seen the fire department come a long way as far as our equipment. You know, we've got up-to-date equipment, the finest in the state. Our personnel is outstanding, and our stations have come a long way. As far as our buildings, we have very nice fire stations and the apparatus to put in them.
You know, it's almost like watching a child grow up. It's kind of, you don't see the changes day to day, but if you try to look back at where we are now and where we were then, it's just, it's sort of unbelievable where the technology and the level of equipment and the level of sophistication has come. So it's been pretty a night and day transition from where we were 25 years ago to where we are today.
Day-to-day activities that all firemen have pride and ownership in their station and in their equipment. And we go to extreme lengths to maintain the equipment for readiness. Not just simply washing the truck or washing the station out, but ensuring that all equipment's checked and in its proper location and ready for the next call.
Well, South Lynches, fire district is a district made up of, an area roughly 10-mile radius of here in Lake City, part of Lower Florence County below the Lynches River, hence the name South Lynches, and Upper Williamsburg County. When I got on, we were 5 stations. Since then, I think we've grown up to, we'll be working up toward 9, including some that we're just bringing on. And at 6 of those stations, there's the membership roster with officers and firemen. And we've our organization is really grassroots. It works from the local stations up to the larger organizations. We have district commissioners who generally take care of the drawing the funding for us, and a board of directors and chief officers who handle day-to-day business. We have I think we're up to 5 employees now, including an administrator, training officer, maintenance folks, folks that do inspections, but vast majority of the work for our department is done by volunteers, and that's been our strength over the years.
We have about 130 volunteers on the roll, and of course it's about like any other organization. If you get half of them to be steady involved, and you're doing well. But we do, and they're really active. We get very good turnouts at calls, and it's just that we've strived to be a part of the community and be helpful in any way we can.
Well, the key aspects of the fire department is, the primary is fire suppression. People have those unfortunate situations of a fire in their homes or their vehicles or even their farmlands. That's their primary function. But beyond that, our department, we serve as far as first responders. We're somewhat the backup to the Florence County EMS system as first responders. We assist them. And then automobile accidents, where we are quite involved in responding to those, and especially when people are entrapped in vehicles and can't get out. That's probably the second most prominent thing that the fire service or South Lynches does.
We're going to probably, as a department, run somewhere in the neighborhood of 800, 850 calls here within our department this year. And again, there are also additional officers meetings and departmental business meetings, board meetings monthly. So it's a pretty active commitment when you get involved with the fire department.
We have a lot of people, and we are staffed with great people in our communities, and they really care. They don't get anything for doing the job as a volunteer. All the time from their families and everything that they have going on, that it's always, if they're getting ready to go to an anniversary, a lot of them will take off to go to a fire call to help someone else, and that means a lot because we have a very strong department.
My daddy being involved in the fire service for many years, I came up around it and was just interested in it my whole life. I just thought it was the greatest, coolest thing in the world to go to a fire with my daddy and ride in the fire truck and go through town, going to a fire and just being around the guys around the station, and that just pretty much consumed my childhood. And I could not wait to turn 15 to officially join the fire department. And in fact, when I did turn 15, I joined in 1998, I believe, and I've been with the fire department now 15 years, working through the ranks from junior fireman all the way up to district chief.
My father's in the fire department. He brought me up in it. I've been going to fires ever since I was a little boy. Officially, I've been on since 1995. I saw how my daddy and all back then, they were always there to help people, and that just drove me to want to carry on the tradition and follow in his footsteps and carry on helping people.
I've been involved in an unofficial capacity since 1973. When I was 3 years old, my father started taking me to the fire departments in town. At that time they were located in 2 separate stations, but our Saturday time together involved going to the city fire station and to the rural fire station. So I've been around it since I was 3 years old, caught the bug, joined the fire department in 1985 when I turned 15, and have been here ever since, now 29 years.
I guess I was young, and at first it was the excitement of it, going to fires to see the fire trucks and all that. But once I got into it, it was more of helping the community. It was a voluntary thing, and I got into it because, not really got into it because of that, but now it's because of the community. I want to do something for the community, help out in the community, and the fire department is one way that you help your community in your area.
My grandfather was one of the original members of the Lake City Rural Fire Department, which is how it started, how it began. And my dad was a paid fireman for the city of Lake City, and then went on to Charleston Naval Base where he retired as a fireman. And my brother's a paid fireman, so it's kind of a long history there. I can remember my grandfather, before they had a fire station, driving the fire truck home at night. And I drove that old truck many miles sitting in the yard.
It was always thrilling. My daddy was an active member of the fire service. He took me on fire calls. He took me to the fire station every day, and I can't remember life without the fire department, literally. It's always been a part of my life, and been accused of it being the #1 priority in my life for many, many years.
All calls have you keep pretty much all calls in your memory, whether they were good or bad, funny, but all of them was different.
Generally speaking, when there's public assistance needed and you're not quite sure where to get it from, the fire department will do it. I remember very distinctly one Sunday morning being woken up to go out and change a lady's tire. She was going to Sunday school and had a flat tire. And we went out and we did it, and she was very gracious and thankful, and we were glad to do it. I've pulled injured dogs out of a ditch tiling one time. Just a lot of stuff. Have actually seen one of our former firemen, Frankie Prince, go about 35 foot up in a tree, and there's you know the joke, you see the stories on TV, get a cat down out of a tree. And I've also had to tell a gentleman one time that, sir, I can't ask one of these fellows to risk their life and limb going up in that tree. You know, and how many times have you ever seen a dead cat skeleton up a tree? They will eventually come down. So a lot of those kind of things have happened over the years.
Probably in recent years, we had a call about 2 o'clock in the morning that a person had wrecked not far from my house, about 2 miles down the road, and that the vehicle was on fire. When I get there, the vehicle was on fire, and of course, I live about 4 miles out in the country, so it's going to take a few minutes before the truck gets there. And there's a couple people standing around, and they're hollering that the person is still in the vehicle and the vehicle is on fire. So I have to start with a fire extinguisher, and bystanders bring me their fire extinguishers, and then we do a bucket brigade from a ditch to keep the man from burning up. He did lose the lower part of his legs from being burnt. They had to amputate him, but he is living today. So it's about helping people and being able to do something good and give something back.
Probably the one most that just has always been in the back of my mind is, and it's probably back in the somewhere in the 90s, where there was an air show here at the local airport, and it was a Sunday morning, if I recall correctly, where most of the planes were leaving to go back to their homes. And there was a plane that had crashed out over off of Highway 512 in Williamsburg County, and South Lynches was toned out to go assist in finding that particular plane, and it was eventually found some hour or so later in a field just off of 512 in Williamsburg County, just east of Cades. And you know, after all of the coroners and everything had completed their work, I was one of a couple of people that went to recover the 2 bodies from that single engine plane. And one of those 2 individuals was probably an 8-10-year-old young boy that was with his father. It's just always been with me all these years.
What many people won't be able to understand is that when you respond to a fire, you got your life on the line. And your ability to protect yourself is nothing. what you have to count on is the ability of the man behind you or the man in front of you to protect you, and their lives are in your hands. I hate to make this analogy, but it's like a soldier in battle. And there's no way to really describe how close you are with your fellow firefighters.
First, the worst day of my life as a volunteer fire department member was the High Hill Church fire back in the mid-'80s, watching the roof collapse on that church, knowing firefighters were endangered and trapped, and we had a fatality of a firefighter. Some of the happiest days of my life are being with the friends, my true friends, my association with these fine people. The fact that we have set the pace for so many young people to go in the right direction to become not only good firemen but productive citizens in our community.
We've all come to, to have close calls, but we put it behind us. We know we learn how to better do our job. With each mistake or each close call that we encounter, we learn to do it better the next time and be on the lookout for sudden changes or anything that could put you in danger or cause an issue to your personal safety.
Humor is a tool that we have to use to cope with some of the more serious calls. So, you learn to adapt yourself, and that part of that's the psychology of the fire department. We do see a lot of unpleasant things. I've seen more deaths than I care to count, both on the fire side and the rescue side. But the relationships you have in the department and the other things, tend to help you block those unpleasant thoughts out with a lot more pleasant thoughts, the fun times you've had. When somebody accidentally gets wet by a fire hose when it's 30 degrees outside, or all of those things that didn't happen but almost happened, and you can sit there and recount your not really near-death experiences, but those things that scared you, that thankfully the Lord was with you on that call and didn't happen.
What makes it worthwhile is the fact that yes, you do have to deal and cope with those unfortunate situations as I just described in it, but it's those situations that we get called to go to that we are able to get there in time to save somebody's house from burning down or being dramatically destroyed, or being able to, like I say, get there and extricate that individual from an entrapped vehicle.
Well, it's the attitudes of the people that we have working here. That's what makes it so interesting. Everybody stays on the same page and gets along, and it's really fun to be around these people, to get away from your jobs and other things to do this. It's just really fun.
The best memories of the fire department is the camaraderie. Growing up, getting on, our buddies hanging around the fire station, having a ball together around the station and responding to calls all together. It's like one big family.
These are not only the folks I work with the fire department, but these are folks that I'm friends with. They're the people who were the groomsmen in my wedding when I got married 18 years ago. They're the folks that I go golfing with, that my family does activities. So it's it's really a commitment to serve your community, but it's also a brotherhood.
They don't get paid. They don't get paid to go to calls. They don't get any reimbursement for their gas, and they give up their time and time with their families and time away from home at night, sleep time. You may get a call at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and don't get back to bed and go straight to work the next day. So it's dedication, and I think it's the message is that we all need to find a way to give back in some way in the community. Volunteer for some organization somewhere, whether it be the Red Cross or a fire department or something in the community where you can give back.
The sacrifices that families have to give for firefighters to be able to respond. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job, and many days it's full-time. And there's no reward except the personal reward, the satisfaction of the people involved.
I'm always impressed at you know, the amount of, you know, caring and the commitment that these folks have, and I hope the community understands. Years ago when I first got involved, one fire drill a month, an occasional meeting, a few classes you had to take to get involved, but it wasn't a real strenuous, drawn-out process. And now it's very much the opposite. We're held to the same level of accountability as professional fire departments are. It's a tremendous amount of training to you know, meet what's required of OSHA, and multiple levels of training, extrication, first responder, first aid, interior structural firefighting, and it's an ongoing process, continuing education. So I hope that folks understand the true commitment that's involved if you're going to stay in this organization.
I can tell you, it's through the leadership of this fire department in the last 50 to 60 years, through Chief Brockington, Chief Harry Askins, and now with Robbie Steele, it has come a long way because of these folks have put their heart and soul into this fire department. They got us to where we are right now. And if it hadn't been for their dedication and hard work and the belief in this fire department, we would not be where we are today.
We're always looking for good recruits, both for firefighting roles and for non-firefighting roles. So, you know, we're here giving our time, and we want others to do the same thing so that we can perpetuate this incredible organization for the future.
A lot of volunteerism has given way. I can remember as a child, when the fire siren went off, everybody dropped whatever they were doing and responded, and everybody was committed. It's hard for us now to find volunteers, and I've heard employees or employers tell their employees, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to work for me or you're going to work for the fire department. Yet, if it was their house on, they'd want it, or house on fire, they'd want everybody to drop everything they're doing to respond to it.
For this fire department, we're primarily focusing on keeping the volunteer as number one, to afford the high level of service with the low insurance rates. It would be economically impossible to replace a volunteer. So we want to keep pride and ownership. We want to keep the focus of the mission, the serving above self, the interest to help the community to make the place that we live and work a safer place and to have a higher quality of life.
I'm thankful people in the community that they respect us and help us in any way they can, and I think we have their respect because we're looking out for them.
We hope it keeps going for years. We have a lot of people under us, under our age groups. Our fire department is filled from 15 years of age on up, and you know, the younger generation's right behind us, and we hoping that they will just keep carrying it on is the same as we've done it the last 38, 40 years.
For 6 decades, courage has stood tall in the face of danger. It has been through the tradition of volunteers that has led to the salvation of so many. And when the smoke clears, for those who've taken the challenge and stood tall against the fate of flames, they will forever remain brothers of fire.